Memories of demanding voting rights are still vivid for civil rights pioneer C.T. Vivian.
We were murdered for the right to vote because they wanted to keep us under constraint.
Despite the dangers, Vivian and others were on a mission to get blacks registered and voting in Selma, Alabama.
You can't keep anyone in the United States from voting.
For weeks, Vivian led dozens of blacks to the courthouse in Selma in a campaign known as Nonviolent Direct Action.
Until you had the vote and showed that you desired it, that was what was most meaningful.
This courthouse does not belong to Sheriff Clark. This courthouse belongs to the people of Dallas County.
Vivian took on Sheriff Jim Clark and admitted racists who enforced local laws that denied blacks voting rights.
So he turned his back on me and started to walk away. And I told him, I said, you can turn your back
on me, but you cannot turn your back upon the idea of justice.
So he decided to do what he always does, is beat people. He really hit me right across the face.
We're willing to be beaten for democracy, and you misuse democracy in the street.
A turning point came in March 1965. A peaceful voting rights protest in Selma turned violent when Alabama State Police attacked unarmed demonstrators on a day known as Bloody Sunday.
Your order to disperse. This march will not continue.
John Lewis, now a U.S. congressman, led the march.
They came toward us, beating us with nightsticks, trampling us with horses, releasing the tear gas. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick. I had a concussion at the bridge.
Can we have somebody take somebody to a doctor?
I thought I was going to die. I thought I saw death.
Images of the attack caused a national outcry. A few days after the violent confrontation, civil rights demonstrators got court approval to march again from Selma to Montgomery.
Martin Luther King Jr. came by to visit me in my hospital room and said, John, don't worry, we will make it from Selma to Montgomery, and the Voting Rights Act will be passed.
All the way from Selma town.
King led tens of thousands of marchers to Alabama's capital in support of voting rights.
I know you're asking today, how long will it take? How long? Not long. Not long.
In just a few months, Congress passed and President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law on August 6, 1965. Giving federal enforcement to the 15th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. By the end of 1965, there were 250,000 new black registered voters. These civil rights pioneers say they're satisfied the sacrifices made by so many 5 decades ago paid off, making the nation better.
I speak tonight for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section of America. This bill will strike down restrictions to voting in all elections.
Today we celebrate our noble tradition by signing our newest civil rights law, the National Voter Registration Act of 1993.
Today we renew a bill that helped bring a community on the margins into the life of American democracy. I am proud to sign the Voting Rights Act, Reauthorization and Amendments Act of 2006.
Young people are fired up about the 2008 election.
Large numbers of African Americans are turning up at the polls in what could be a historic turnout among the nation's largest minority voting group.
11 o'clock on the East Coast, we can report history.
Barack Obama is projected to be the next president of the United States of America.
As the polls opened from the east to the west across this country, the same picture continued to emerge. Eager voters showing up before the polls even opened, and in many cases, lines as far as the eye could see.
This mathematically makes no sense to me.
Some of these
cheating has happened. I don't believe it. I think this is voter fraud.
Several new voting laws recently enacted in the United States.
I think we've got a lack of voter integrity.
That means our voting is not honest in this country.
State after state can't point to a single instance of in-person voter impersonation, not one.
Name it for what it is. It's an attempt to repress minority voting, masquerading as an attempt to end corruption.
It's an ID. Everyone has an ID.
Voter ID, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania. Done.
We cut Obama by 5%, and I think that probably voter ID had helped a bit in that.
Experts found that African American voters were nearly twice as likely to lack voter ID.
Well, I think Hillary Clinton is about the weakest candidate the Democrats have ever put up. And now we have photo ID, and I think photo ID is going to make a little bit of a difference as well.
These restrictions on voting are a direct response to the election of the nation's first African American president.
We just got new metrics in. Donald J. Trump is the president of the United States elect.
The new Presidential Commission on Election Integrity, established after President Trump, who lost the popular vote, insisted 3 to 5 million people voted illegally.
Again, you don't have any hard physical evidence that this happened.
More than 20 states say they can't or won't comply with this week's request for voter roll data.
The American Civil Liberties Union is launching a 50-state campaign to restore Americans' voting rights.
You know the issues of North Carolina voter ID. The Fourth Circuit issues a decision. They said it was clear that the intent was to target African Americans with, quote, surgical precision.
The history of democracy in this country has never been a simple story of linear progress. We have overcome every moment of backlash, and we will overcome this one and move closer to a democracy in which everyone can participate and be treated equally.
The vote is the most powerful, non-violent tool we have in the democratic society. We must not allow the power of the vote to be neutralized. We must never go back.
1, 2, 3, 4. Voting rights we're fighting for. 5, 6, 7, 8. We cannot afford to wait. In 1865, justice was for something high. The abolitionists stood bravely to denounce the cry that we the people form the union and deserve to see for every man and woman, black or white, equality. Frederick Douglass, 1865.
I am for the immediate, unconditional, and universal enfranchisement of the black man in every state in the Union. Without it, his liberty is a mockery.
Mary Church Terrell, 1912.
What could be more absurd than to have one group of human beings who are denied rights working to prevent another group from obtaining those same rights?
Dear Martin, we know that while it's necessary to say no to racial injustice, this must be followed by a positive program of action. The struggle for the right to vote, for economic uplift of the people.
Fannie Lou Hamer, 1964.
1870. The 15th Amendment gave every man a chance to vote. And now it's 64, and they still trying to keep us away from the ballot. You say, honey, I'm behind you. Well, move. I don't want you back there. I want you to say, honey, I am with you, and we'll go up this freedom road together.
To be treated as a human being. Right. Don't you take away my dignity. In a democracy to have a voice. I've got a right to vote. 2, 3, 4, voting rights we're fighting for. 5, 6, 7, 8. We cannot afford to wait. Lyndon B. Johnson, 1965.
It was more than 100 years ago Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. A century has passed since equality was promised and the Negro is not yet equal. The time for justice has now come. No force can hold it back.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, 2013.
The sad irony of the court's decision today lies in its utter failure to grasp why the Voting Rights Act has proven effective. Throwing out pre-clearance when it has worked to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm.